Hey authors, it's Megan Barnhard coming at you live from the Author Like a Boss Facebook page and the Author Like a Boss Facebook group. If you are joining me live, give me a shout out. Let me know where you are, what you're writing, and how your writing is going. I'm going to get us shared up in the Author Like a Boss Facebook group. If you're not already in that group, definitely come join us. You can find it under groups at ALAB, and we have a lot of fun. We help authors go after their big dreams and turn them into realities. So definitely you want to be there if you are not already. And when I say we, I mean my partner, Ella Barnard, and I. She gives you great marketing tips. I give you writing tips. Gosh, it's so hard to read and talk at the same time. But I'm making sure to get shared up in our live group. And really our goal is to help you author like bosses and to turn those author dreams into author realities. So we are live every week. If you want to get notified when we go live, you can go to authorlikeaboss.com/notify and you can sign up to get live alerts. So how do I want to help you author like a boss today? Well, I'm going to be continuing with the month-long discussion about believable characters. Because if you want to author like a boss, you have to have characters who jump off the page and who are memorable to your readers and, you know, that make readers go, yes, that feels like a real person, and make readers really feel engaged in your story. Today, I'm going to wrap up the discussion about believable characters by doing a quick recap, some do's and don'ts, and then a live Q&A. So, you know, how do I make my characters realistic, but still make it possible for the reader to identify with them? Do they feel real? Are they too perfect or too flawed? How do I keep the storyline flowing smoothly and keep the whole story contained and coherent? Those are just a few of the questions that you guys submitted and that I'm going to be answering in the Q&A at the end of this video. So make sure you stick around. Hey, Lloyd! Oh, if you're here, make sure you comment. Say hello so I can say hello back. Awesome. So let's start with a recap, y'all. What does it take to have realistic characters? And if you want to dive deeper into any of these topics, go ahead and find the videos. They're all on our YouTube channel, Author Like a Boss, and you can find all our live videos there. So if you missed it live in the group or you want to rewatch something, make sure you check out our YouTube channel. If you subscribe, you'll always get our latest videos. So again, you can dive deeper into these topics, but here's the recap. The first thing you need to do when you're building characters is create the character arcs for your main characters and have it move in parallel to your plot arc. Your character arc is going to be your main character's big moments of decision, change, you know, big threats, triumphs, and those need to be matched up to the moments of greatest drama and tension in the action that happens in your story. Planning your character arcs based on the plot is going to help ensure that your characters go on an interesting journey and also reveal their depths to readers. So that's step number one. The second part of creating realistic characters is thinking about character voices, right? And taking into account the settings your characters are in, their background, their outlook on life. Voice is not just what characters say, it's also what they notice. It's their view going through the world. And creating character voice from the inside out is the difference between believable characters on the one hand and caricatures on the other hand. And I want you guys to like have an image in your mind of Foghorn Leghorn or Pepe Le Pew, right? One of those characters who's totally ridiculous. You know, it's like there's no character, there's just an accent, right? That's what you want to avoid. So you want to create characters from the inside out and think about voice as really the unique point of view of that character. All right. The third piece of creating realistic characters has to do with using your supporting characters strategically. And when you use them strategically, really what you're building is almost like a pinball machine where your main character is the pinball and your supporting characters are all of the objects that the pinball bounces off of. And you want each one of those supporting characters to help your main character fulfill her arc, go on her journey. And we talked about in the video, there's a whole video about supporting characters. We talked about first creating them as placeholders so that you make sure they fulfill a role in the story. Then you can flesh them out and look deeper and see what's behind them. And you can do this really successfully and build your supporting characters and your main characters by using the Believable Character Worksheet. And that's available as a free download if you go to authorlikeaboss.com/characters. I'm going to go ahead and put that link in the comments. Hey, Michelle. Hey, Stacy. Hey, Marina. Ooh, I was looking away. I was looking at my notes and a bunch more people joined. Awesome. So good to see you guys. All right. Hey, Marion. Yay. Yes, characters, not caricatures, says Marion. Absolutely. That's the difference. I say, that is the difference between, that's my foghorn leghorn, between characters and caricatures. All right, so that's the recap of building believable characters, and I really do recommend you guys grab that Believable Character Worksheet because it's going to save you a lot of work from putting too much time and energy into characters who don't need it. Not every character you write has to have a complete backstory, so that'll save you some work. Hey, Dave, great to see you. So next, I'm going to journey into some do's and don'ts for creating believable characters. So I kind of just alluded to this, but the first don't is don't create a complete dossier on every single character. That's going to be a big time suck. This is actually a procrastination warning. A lot of us, I definitely include myself, I know Ella has talked about this too, a lot of us procrastinate by endlessly doing research, right? And we're like, oh, this is important. It's part of my writing because I need to know this for my writing. But it's a place we just stay in, right? And doing research is safe because it's not us putting our creativity out into the world and on the line, right? So beware, procrastination warning. Doing a full dossier for every single character is research because you're researching into your characters. The research that happens can be in your own mind. So you don't need to know who the second grade teacher was of the store clerk who only appears in one scene. You don't need to know what type of aftershave he uses. Save that energy for researching into your main characters. And again, that worksheet is going to help you figure out how much information you actually need. So do use that Believable Character Worksheet to save time, to plan smarter, and to avoid that procrastination, that endless research. It's something that's really common. It's easy to slip into. I know I have to be very vigilant about it. Okay, next, don't feel like you have to know everything about your main characters before you start drafting your first chapter. Sometimes we feel like we have to put in our time planning, like we have to pay our planning dues before we get to the fun part of drafting. Like planning is the vegetables and drafting is the dessert. Now, I do believe in planning. I think planning is great. I like to plan my characters from a theme point of view. But that doesn't mean I know everything about my main characters before I start drafting. Because what I do recommend you do is to use the drafting process itself, plus free writing, mind mapping, and other brainstorming techniques interspersed with your drafting to gain deeper insights into your characters after you've given them a chance to live a little. And I've seen this be such a powerful tool for authors I work with, where they go, I'm not sure what's going to happen in the next scene, or I'll just say, hey, try this free write. One of my favorite character free writes is an object free write, where your character's looking at an object and it's like, oh, I remember the first time I get, whatever it is. It leads to a memory and you gain this deeper insight. And I have seen so many authors do a free write activity like that and come to an understanding about a character they didn't have previously, right? It's like, I never would have been able to plan that rationally, consciously, analytically. But when I got into that creative space and just started free writing, oh my gosh, this really cool, piece of backstory emerged for my character. So that is a really fun way to learn about your characters, and allows you to use what you have come up with from your planning analytical part and go deeper. And sometimes that's when you get these moments of, I don't know, like kismet or meant to be or synchronicity, and you're like, oh, of course, that's the reason that she hates cats. It's because of this story that just popped into my mind. All right. So the next don't get sucked into obvious caricature traps and tropes. Boy, that's hard to say. I was talking about accents or even colloquialisms or predictable but annoying behavior. And I have a great example of this. Do you guys like audiobooks? I love them. I don't know how I would survive without audiobooks. It's not just for long drives for me. It's anytime I get in my car, I have an audiobook on. And I just finished a great book by Christopher Moore, Secondhand Souls, that I really enjoyed. But I kept laughing because the voice actor had only like one tough guy voice. So there were a couple characters in the book who were kind of tough guys, and the book takes place in San Francisco, but all those tough guys sounded like they were from the Bronx. Like every tough guy was like, hey, I'm walking here, right? This very stereotypical accent, and I was cracking up, and that's not bad writing. It was like the interpretation the voice actor did or the director, right? There's somewhere past what the author had control of, there was a weird choice made. But it became like goofy and laughable, and I was taken out of the story. So, if somebody's doing it, if a voice actor is doing a voice, obviously we get that tone, but sometimes we fall into that trap with our writing as well. I wonder if anybody's ever gotten stuck where you're, I don't know, whether it's a tough guy or some other trope just starts sounding like a caricature of that role instead of a real person. Be wary of creating a character that is a stereotype. Hey, Carrie, good to see you. And that's something that you might have a harder time seeing, but when you send your book to beta readers, that's a great question to ask. Hey, did any of the characters seem more like stereotypes or more like caricatures than like real people to you? Hey, Melissa. Oh, so many fun, familiar, friendly faces. It's awesome, you guys. All right, instead of getting sucked into that trap, do take the time to create a mission statement for your story. Where you plan the kinds of tropes that are appropriate for your genre, and also where you think through your own literary pet peeves. One of the authors in the Author Boss Academy, when working on her mission statement, was really clear about like, I don't like Mary Sue characters. If there's some character and it's like, oh, as soon as I wake up in the morning, I'm beautiful and everybody loves me and I do everything right. And she knew like really clearly that was something she wanted to avoid. And it just is like one more piece as you write that helps you make good decisions for your characters, especially minor characters, right? So those ones that it's not worth putting a lot of attention into planning the backstory for, we can still make sure are in alignment with what we think are good characters when we map that out ahead of time. So those are some do's and don'ts for you. You guys, if any of those approaches sound helpful to you, if you would really, like to be guided through how do I create that mission statement and how can I get some feedback on my characters, you would love the writing course that we have in the Author Boss Academy. It takes you from your mission statement through your character arcs, and even has all these guided free writes to discover who your characters are and, learning those pieces of information. Of course, the writing course is only one of the courses that's in there. We also have all the marketing pieces you need and all the publishing pieces you need. If you're interested in learning more about the Author Boss Academy that Ella and I run, come to our live webinar later today. You can register at authorlikeaboss.com/how-to. And we will be walking you through some of the big mistakes that indie authors can easily make, like things that you can get sucked into doing that work against you instead of for you. So I hope you guys will join us for that. Okay, let's see. Before we get into the Q&A, oh yes, new on the podcast, Ella interviews Jonathan Yanez about how to find your writing voice. And she actually has a whole episode she did recently about the new privacy regulations. So if you run an email list or a newsletter, you need to check out the recent changes. They're hitting the EU and the global market. So if you sell internationally, it's really important. But I don't know if you guys have noticed in the last week or so, since the European Union passed the GDP something, their new law, I have gotten emails from every service provider talking about how they're updating their privacy policies, because even though this is originating in the EU, all the US companies are like, oh, if that's the new standard of privacy and using people's data and protecting it, we better be up on it. So you guys definitely want to catch that episode. Make sure you are doing the right things in terms of privacy with your newsletters, any contests you're running, things like that. So you can listen to all the episodes of the podcast at authorlikeaboss.com/podcast. And if you enjoy what you hear, please don't forget to leave a review, because your review helps other people find the podcast. It lets us know if you're getting good value from it. You know, Ella is constantly looking for new indie authors to talk with, and she really wants to provide content that is interesting and inspiring to you guys. So, you know, leave a review, let her know what you're loving. You know, it's just like a book review. It really does make a difference. Has anybody been listening to the podcast? Give me an emoji or a comment or a thumbs up in the comments. Are you guys as inspired as I am? It's pretty rad. I'm enjoying listening to it. Okie doke, let's get into the Q&A. So I'm going to start with questions that people submitted in the group over the course of this month. But if you have a question, please go ahead and put it in the comments. And I'm going to be scrolling through, and hopefully we'll see your question. But if for some reason I miss it, I'll read through the comments after the video is over and answer them in a reply comment. All right, so Peggy said she struggles with making characters realistic, but still making it possible for the reader to identify with them. Peggy and everybody else, I have great news for you. The best thing you can do for your characters that accomplishes both of these tasks, making them realistic and making your readers enjoy them and connect with them, is to give your characters vulnerabilities. We're all drawn to other people's vulnerabilities. Ella talks about this a lot in terms of your marketing, but it's also true for creating characters. If you can be a little bit vulnerable, people are invited in. So think about any event you've been to where there was an ice-breaking activity. I've been going to this really cool speaking group lately run by a speaking coach, and it's like for getting into your body and not being so nervy and all kinds of cool stuff around speaking. And at the beginning, we always do something silly. We play improv games that are intended to make us look ridiculous, because then everybody's like, oh, I feel for you. If you look ridiculous, I'm already rooting for you. So that works for your characters. If you can give your character a vulnerability, and that is a weakness or a flaw, or even just something your character wants with all her heart. Think of the opening to any Disney movie, right? The character is singing a song, I wish, I want, I need. You know, that is an intense desire that this character has, and immediately we're drawn to that character. So Peggy, I hope that makes sense. Make your character vulnerable, and your readers will see that person as real and will also connect with her and start rooting for her from the very first page. All right. May said, keeping the storyline flowing smoothly. I love small revelations about characters and sort of random moments, but it's a struggle for me to keep the whole story contained and coherent. May, this is where it's going to be really powerful to alternate between drafting and doing some of those free writes. So definitely get in there first and create your character arc. And you may want to check out the videos we have about your inspired central conflict on our YouTube channel that help you map out your conflict, make sure your story is going somewhere. Then you can check out the videos in this series about creating your character arc. Once you have those anchor points in place, then you can have fun and you can play and you can do free writes to learn more about your character, but in the framework of you already know the journey she's going on and you know it makes sense and is taking you somewhere good. Kendra said, how do I show my characters depth to a reader? I know and love my characters, but will I be able to share that with my readers? What a great question. Again, the vulnerability is going to be an important piece with this. And Kendra, I would highly recommend doing some free writes. A great free write for this is an I wish or I hope free write. And what you do is take on the voice of a character you want to show more about and pretend you are that character, and you write about what that person wants most of all, or wishes for, or is afraid of. You know, branch out into all those different, think about the anxieties that we all have constantly all the time, right? Oh, I'm afraid of, I'm worried about, I wish, if only, you know, all those things. Write about it as your character so you gain that insight. then look through it and go, oh, that's what Joe is really worried about when he's being a jerk in that scene, and find ways to, depending on your narrative voice, add in like a little mini scene that demonstrates that fear, you know, or maybe dialogue, or if it's a main character, it could be some inner dialogue, or it could be narration from that person's point of view. Hey, Lori. Oh, yes, Stacey, the podcast is amazing. I know. Okay. Let's get the next question here. Hazel said, I'm a fairly mild-mannered person and have trouble writing aggressive, strong-willed people. Ooh, Hazel, I would recommend to you the same thing I just recommended to Kendra, which is to do some free writes. Because this works whatever the difference is between you and your characters, whether you're mild-mannered and your character is aggressive, whether you are happy and your character is unhappy, whatever it is, wherever you're finding that divide, that's a place where it's easy for us as authors to remain outside the character and maybe even be a little bit judgmental. I've definitely fallen into this trap. Maybe you haven't. But if I'm writing about a character who's very different from how I am, I sometimes find myself judgmental. And I'm like, oh, well, she's just a bad person. That's why she's doing this. And I have to stop and go, wait, that won't be realistic to my reader. That'll take them out. And I may even start to get a little bit preachy, right? And when I'm writing fiction, I'm writing for like middle grade young audiences. And it's easy to get preachy where you're like, children, don't do this. This is bad. You know, I'm like, oh, slow down. That's not an interesting story. So get into your character's head and find out what makes her want what she wants, what makes her fear what she fears, but walk in her shoes, right? So that you have that empathy and you're writing then your character from a place of deep understanding. Now, in terms of like the practical things of what this person will say and how this person will act, the technical aspects of writing a character you're not familiar with, do some research, watch some shows, read some books about people being aggressive, asking your writer communities for recommendations of characters who are badasses or who are tough or, whatever is the type of like personality trait you want to get, and observe, right? So that's kind of 2 steps. One is make sure you can empathize and feel with that person, but 2, fill in the gaps of your knowledge with some research and ask for recommendations of great characters to follow. Kelly says, once I start a character and send them in one direction, I tend to go off the path. How do I keep from doing that? Kelly, make sure you are mapping out your character arc. And before you can do that, make sure you have your central conflict really clear in mind. And we've got, again, videos about all of those on the YouTube channel. Dee Marie says, do they feel real? Are they too perfect or too flawed? The vulnerabilities are going to be super helpful. In terms of the too flawed, that's an interesting question because that might be more of looking at the character arc. If you find that you have flaws that are unnecessary, that might be the reason to weed them out. We all react to characters who are too perfect. I personally am really annoyed by Snow White. Don't care for her as a character. Oh, I'm just wishing. Okay, that's a different thing. But if somebody is too flawed, it's not necessarily creating a problem in us as readers connecting, but it might be that you're just adding in too many ingredients. So look at your character arc, look at your character's journey, and ask, is there something here that's just not helping me move through that arc, and I can leave it behind? Tervine says, a thought regarding developing characters is, what is the right way to distinguish the personality of different characters through the art of dialogue delivery? Also, I'm from a multilingual background, and sometimes to develop an Indian character who actually can't speak English in an English story is something that makes me think of it. That sounds like a really cool perspective. Tervine, go ahead and watch the video about character voice and think about everything that leads up to the way we speak. Our background, our education, our family structure, where we live in the world, all of those influence our worldview. And it's really our worldview that influences the way we speak. So start a few steps back. And then a really fun activity to do is to recruit a writing buddy and practice dialogue and say, can you please be this supporting character or whatever, my main character's friend, Her name is Angela. You know, she's a psychotherapist and she likes hiking, whatever. Just, you don't have to give me long responses. I want to talk to you as my character. So can you kind of just prompt me and ask me questions? And it's a fun activity, and you can often gain a lot of insight into your characters, and you can do that out loud, or I particularly like it co-writing, where you are working in a shared Google Docs. You can see what the other person's typing in real time. So give that a try. Edward said the usual questions about supporting characters: how many of them to have, how much to develop them, etc. I figured that'll fall out with service to the story, though. Yes, absolutely, Edward. Definitely create placeholder characters, create them as the insides of your pinball machine. What do you need? And this is a place where that believable character worksheet is going to help you. Wayne says, my worry is that my main character is not interesting enough for readers to become invested in. Interesting is hard to gauge, but what's easier to gauge, Wayne, is vulnerable. And again, if you can make a character who's vulnerable through a flaw, a weakness, or a desire, we will usually be on board with that character, and make sure that you're showing us how that character moves through the world so we get a chance to see him and relate to him. Lonnie says, I'm worried my characters are too simple. Make sure your main characters have arcs, that they're going on journeys, that when they get to the climax, there's some big decision, some fear that's being brought up. Angela says, I'm worried I'm not using enough periphery characters. Go through and create the placeholders you need in your pinball machine. Make sure that you have people who are sending your character in the directions she needs to go. And you don't have to have a lot of periphery characters. If they don't serve a purpose, don't overload us. I think it's better to err on the side of fewer characters, because it's confusing if we have too many characters. And if they don't end up doing anything, then we kind of tune out. Karen says, making them grow. My characters grow close, but with the life-altering stuff that happens, I can't seem to make them grow with it. So this is a place where you may need to do some diving deep. Karen, you may need to do some free writing. You may need to get in and do that character planning activity. And make sure you're really connected with your character's motivations. April says, kicking my supporting character to the curb. How can I do that without killing them? Ooh. So how can you put somebody out of commission without killing him? Can he break a law or a rule to some extent that he's just not allowed back in wherever the rest of your characters are? Sometimes people remove themselves if we do something we feel incredibly guilty about or ashamed of, or, just otherwise crappy. So I would say, can he be taken out legally, or can he be taken out by his own power because he feels awful about what he did? Or people get ostracized from groups if their behavior is really, really bad. So those might be places to explore. Let's see, Carrie, I see your question right here. In my Bear Shifter story, I have my heroine stepmom call her and tell her about how ill Miss Badass Bounty Hunter, how the stepmom describes my heroine, can't save her daddy this time. Oh, okay. Was there a question related to that? Or is that just advancing the story? That sounds cool. Oh, Mike, so sad for your character who thinks she's being punished. Is she, in fact, in your universe? Is her illness a punishment? That'd be interesting for you to decide as the author. Kristen says, I worry that readers won't see the picture I'm trying to place in their mind. Ooh. There's a lot of, let's see. There's a lot of advice about showing and imagery, but in relation to characters, what I would start with, Kristen, is for you to get really clear on what it is you want to reveal about a character, and then brainstorm what are the different ways that could come across. So if you're worried that your readers won't know your character, I don't know, feels suspicious, do a brainstorm. What are all the ways I could bring out suspicion, create some possible scenes, and free write those scenes and see which ones you like. So in other words, before you worry too much about the detail, make sure you know what it is you're trying to show. Earl asks, how can I properly develop characters that jump off the page? Earl, by following all of the steps in the video sequence from this month. So looking at your character arc, looking at character voice, looking at supporting characters, and get started by rewatching the videos from this month in the group. Again, they're on our YouTube channel, and check out that Guide to Believable Characters, which is at authorlikeaboss.com/characters. All right, a lot of great questions about characters. I love that everybody is thinking about how to create better characters. We know good characters are so central to good stories, and there are a lot of ways you can approach them without getting sucked into that procrastination, endless research thing. If you haven't already checked out that resource of creating believable characters, definitely do. So if you want to get reminded when we're going live via Facebook Messenger, you can go to authorlikeaboss.com/notify. I hope we will get to see some of you, if not all of you, later today at the live webinar, How to Author Like a Boss. And again, you can register for that at authorlikeaboss.com/how-to. And we'll be talking about the 3 big mistakes that kill your writing, the 3 big mistakes that sabotage your marketing, and then the 3 game-changing actions you can take right now to not only avoid those mistakes, but to also really, throw your authoring into high gear. So it's a really powerful webinar. There's a lot about just changing the way you think about your writing and your marketing and changing the way you look at it. So if you're feeling a little bit stuck, if you're not sure what your next steps are, or if you're a little bit overwhelmed, I really encourage you to come to that webinar and kind of get some guidance and get some, I don't know, a feeling of it's possible. And we'll also be taking questions. There'll be a live Q&A. So you can ask me and Ella your burning questions about writing and marketing. All right, y'all. Oh, Marina asked, can we use a real-life person in their career as a character in a fiction novel if that person is deceased? So, Marina, there are a couple questions that go with this, and I highly recommend, where is my copy of it? I highly recommend this book, Self-Publisher's Legal Handbook by Helen Sedgwick. It's available on Amazon. She is an author and she is a lawyer, so she knows what she's talking about. But what I gather from her book, and I am not a lawyer, but what I gather from her book is the only time you really worry is if you're saying something negative about a person. If you're talking about somebody is listening to Elvis Presley music and dancing, there's not a problem there. The problem would come if you're saying something that could sound like defamation, is negative about the person. If that person is deceased, then the question would be, well, who owns that person's estate, right? Because even if somebody is dead, there could still be relatives or lawyers or somebody who would defend that name. So if you're not saying something negative, it's usually not a thing to worry about, but this book is inexpensive and full of great information. I highly recommend it. So check that out, Marina. All right, you guys, I am going to sign off and wish you happy authoring. Thanks so much for watching. And I hope I will see you at today's webinar at authorlikeaboss.com/how-to. Take care. Bye.